On October 3rd, 2018, dispatchers would get a 911 phone call from Jessy Kurczewski, stating that she had found her friend Lynn Hernan unresponsive at her home. Jessy had known Lynn since her childhood because Jessy was the daughter of Lynn's good friend. Due to Lynn's declining health, Jessy would take on her role as caregiver, which would lead her to visiting Lynn's house daily.
When first responders responded to Lynn Hernan's house, they would find Lynn unconscious in her living room in her recliner chair. Next to her on the table were her prescription pills. Some of her pills were crushed on her chest, leading police to initially rule her death as an accidental overdose. Jessy would then tell police that she believed that Lynn wanted to unalive herself due to her deteriorating health condition.
Investigators would discover that Jessy had a criminal background. Jessy had spent time in prison for forgery and identity theft, being released on probation in 2016. In July of 2019, Jessy would be arrested on a probation and a parole hold, which would give investigators an opportunity to question her. During the interview, Jessy would claim that Lynn had been taking multiple different medications, including discontinued ones, before her death. Another claim that Jessy had was that Lynn had been spending a lot of money. Lynn's toxicology report would come back with a drug in her system that was not supposed to be there, called tetrahydrolazine, which is a chemical compound found in many over-the-counter eye drops and stated by medical officials to be fatal if ingested in large amounts.
When investigators confronted Jessy about the toxicology report, Jessy stated that Lynn, quote-unquote, used eye drops all the time. Then, when investigators stated that the medical examiner stated that they believed that due to the amount of tetrahydrolazine that was in Lynn's body at the time of her death, that the eye drops were rather ingested than absorbed through the eye. Jessy would be quick to deny ever giving Lynn eye drops to drink. Jessy would ask to speak to investigators the next day. In this interview, she would tell police that Lynn was determined to unalive herself, and that Lynn had told her that she had mixed Visine and vodka a few times just to see how it would feel.
She was looking for a way out, Jessy states. The next day, Jessy would ask to speak to investigators again. Jessy says that Lynn would mix eye drops and vodka as some form of cocktail that she would drink often. Jessy says that Lynn had been ingesting Visine for months because Lynn said she liked the feeling it gave her, helping her relax and sleep. Jessy says that she tried to stop Lynn several times.
I always gave in to what she wanted because it was her choice and what she wanted, Jessy stated. During this interview, Jessy would add more details to what happened the day of Lynn's death. She would state that Lynn would confess to her that she had put 6 Visine bottles into a plastic water bottle. She said that the pair would argue over Lynn having said water bottle and Jessy not wanting to give it to her. Then finally, Jessy would give in and give her said water bottle. Then afterwards, Jessy would leave to run a few errands that would last a couple hours, stating that she had no knowledge of how much Lynn had taken and how that would actually affect her. When asked by investigators why they should now finally believe her, she stated, "I finally told you everything."
Investigators would continue to look into the relationship between Jessy and Lynn. This would lead investigators to discover Lynn's and Jessy's finances, finding out that a large amount of Lynn's assets had either gone to Jessy directly or the accounts that Jessy had access to were depleted. In June of 2021, Jessy would be arrested and charged with first-degree intentional homicide and 2 counts of felony theft by stealing from Lynn before and after her death.
Investigators allegedly believe that Jessy took over $200,000 from Lynn. They also believe that Jessy deliberately poisoned Lynn with eye drops with the intention to kill her after spending majority of her money. Jessy would plead not guilty to first-degree intentional homicide and 2 counts of felony theft.
Jessy protested her innocence, claiming that she loved Lynn, and Jessy's lawyers would state that Lynn willingly gave Jessy money as gifts or as a payment for helping her out.
The prosecution claimed that Jessy was one of Lynn's beneficiaries, and then they argued that Lynn Hernan became worth more dead than alive to Jessy. The defense, on the other hand, would state that Jessy was not the one that poisoned Lynn.
She just liked vodka. She also liked Visine. I have no idea why, Jessy's lawyer stated.
The closing arguments would begin. The prosecution would look into the tetrahydrolazine and state that that is what killed Lynn. They would also look at Lynn's declining credit in the months leading up to her death, and this was mainly due to maxed out credit cards. The prosecution would point out the multiple checks that were made to Jessy for large amounts that were draining Lynn's bank account and a fraudulent loan. They would also state that the document that Jessy had gave to them to prove where the money was going from, detectives had determined was fake. The defense would state that Lynn's death was due to various amounts of drugs in her system, some that she wasn't even supposed to be taking. The defense would state that Lynn was in a lot of pain due to her declining health, and even though she was in palliative care is the relieving or soothing of the conditions of a disorder or a disease while still maintaining the highest quality of life for said patient of all conditions and ages. The defense stated that because of this, Lynn would decide to start spending her money, including giving large sums of money to Jessy before deciding to unalive herself. Lynn would give money to Jessy all the time. Giving money to Jessy made her happy. Jessy was like a daughter to her, the defense stated.
The prosecution rebutted, claiming that the defense was turning their argument into a full-blown attack on Lynn Hernan in an effort to, quote-unquote, mislead the jury. Jessy would be allowed to speak before sentencing, and she would state that her previous lawyers were not effective and state that she did not receive a fair trial. It was noted that at that point, Jessy had had 8 lawyers withdraw from representing her.
If convicted for the intentional homicide, Jessy faced mandatory sentence. If she was convicted of the felony thefts, she would be facing 5 years max for each sentence on top of a 5-year extended supervision period. The jury would deliberate for about 7 hours before coming back and finding Jessy guilty of first-degree intentional homicide and 2 counts of felony theft. After the verdict, the prosecution stated that they were very happy with the jury's decision and that the medical examiner provided vital evidence to this case.
The defendant betrayed Lynn out of greed. This case highlighted the financial vulnerability of the victim and what a person would do to get what they want, the prosecution stated.
Jessy would be sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of extended supervision after 30 years for the first-degree intentional homicide. Jessy would then be sentenced to 10 years for her 2 counts of felony theft, and that would be ordered to be served consecutively with her life sentence. Jessy will be eligible for parole in 40 years.
The judge stated that her goal of Jessy's sentence was to have Jessy eligible for parole around the age of 80 years old.
Not only was Jessy sentenced to prison, but she was ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $387,000. The restitution would be paid with an escrow account set up for any money that she would make off of interviews, book dealings, movies, TV shows, anything like that. Anything that she would profit off of this case for goes into this account to pay for her restitution. Anthony Paza, who is a friend of Lynn, would state that it's been 5 years of stress. I'm just glad we finally have justice.
Jessy states, quote-unquote, I will not stop fighting. As God is my witness, this case is far from over.
And that is the end of today's video. If you liked today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, be safe, Earthlings. Peace out.